The world right now feels volatile, loud, charged. We're in a time where pressure seems to be building everywhere, politically, socially, emotionally. We can feel the intensity, the power struggles, the collective anger, and a sense that everything is coming to a boil. When the world looks like this, it's easy to fall into a sense of helplessness, like the only options are for us to be outraged or to shut down or to numb everything away. Like the forces at play are so big that our presence doesn't actually matter. This full moon in Leo is here to remind you of something very different. Your role is not passive, and your power is not theoretical. The world doesn't change because people burn themselves out reacting. It changes when people have embodied creative presence. On February 1st, we have a full moon in the sign of Leo. And we're going to talk about how this is showing up in our lives right now and how we can use this illumination and the energy that it's bringing into our sky. We'll discuss the astrology, the human design, and gene keys, and end with a somatic cue/somatic practice that you can start doing today. Full moons are about culmination, something that was began 6 months ago, so around July 2025, is now coming to a close. You're seeing the fruits of some sort of effort. We are also seeing something being illuminated to us. The sun is illuminating the unconscious, the moon. And as we move toward this full moon and the moon is waxing, we are seeing more and more of the unconscious in ourselves and in the collective being brought up to be expressed because this is a full moon in Leo after all. Leo is a fire sign and it has a lot to do with creative self-expression, confidence, leadership. It's a bold and warm sign, generous, heart-led. If we take a look at the sky during the time of this lunation, which will be happening on February 1st, we notice that, yes, the moon is in Leo, and it's opposing all of these planets in Aquarius. Now, I recently did a video on all of these planets, the stellium in Aquarius. This is the last video I did, so make sure you check that out if you haven't already. But we talked about how this is collective systems. It's a lot of different types of systems. What's interesting about this lunation is that the ruler of the moon, which is in the sign of Leo, is the sun. And the sun is sitting in Aquarius. Now, the sun does not like being in the sign of Aquarius. It is debilitated here. And the ego and the identity and clarity and a sense of self are ruled by the sun. So our sense of self right now is being displaced into collective causes. And this is very important because Pluto, the great exposer, the underworld, has been touching all of these personal planets, exposing the power struggles inherent in the collective and in the systems that we have in our world. Just before this lunation, we have a Mars-Pluto conjunction, which is filled with intensity. Mars being action, war, courage, independence, assertion, and Pluto being intensity, transformation, death, rebirth, regeneration through pain, oftentimes. Right before this full moon, we also have Neptune moving into Aries. I've made videos on Neptune and Aries that happened January 26th, and now it is here to stay until 2039. With Mars conjunct Pluto, Neptune moving into Aries, and this full moon being in the fiery sign of Leo, we see that fire and intensity coming together, anger and intensity coming together. when you look at this chart, you might notice that the moon is not really being touched by anything else. It only has its opposition to the sun and Venus and Mars, less so to Pluto and Mercury. This is putting a lot of stress on our emotional bodies. So today I want to talk about why it's so important for us to recognize what we are here to contribute to the collective. Leo, as I mentioned, is a very passionate sign, and it naturally rules the fifth house. And the fifth house has a lot to do with our sense of expression. Leo is a courageous sign, and it has a lot to do with power, right? Being ruled by the sun, the king, and being ruled by the lion, the king of the kingdom. There is something about sovereignty when it comes to Leo. And today I want to talk about the inevitable discussion around the intensity of our world right now and how that is affecting us. Now, this full moon also is happening in Human Design Gate 33, the gate of privacy or retreat, going from the Gene Key shadow of forgetting to the gift of mindfulness. And Mercury here is square Uranus and sextiling Chiron. This is allowing us for new insight that may be shocking, but necessary for a sense of evolution or progress. And it can be incredibly healing in recovering a sense of agency. Chiron in Aries, where Neptune has now moved, agency. We've talked about, the history of Neptune in Aries and Uranus in Gemini and war, right? And the spiritual warrior and all these things. But 165 years ago when we had Neptune in Aries, or 84 years ago when we had Uranus in Gemini, where it will move for good for 7 years in April, we did not have access to this much information. We are privy to much more than most people ever have been. And this affects us in a way that those times in history wouldn't understand. Constant stimulation fractures your sense of identity and agency. And Leo asks for a very specific type of leadership. One of the things that we don't talk about enough with Leo, in my opinion, as a Leo rising, is how much Leo values authenticity and honesty, right? This is ruled by the sun. It's not Pluto. It's not the underworld. It casts light onto things. Leo energy doesn't like secrets. It likes things to be out in the open. Doesn't quite understand why people are secretive. Just be honest. But one of the things about Leo as well is because it is a sense of unique expression and about the self. If Aries is the self, Leo is the expression of that self. When we are in a state of constant stimulation or constant outrage, we fracture our sense of agency and our unique expression and contribution. That's why no matter how hard you fight, you feel like you're powerless. That's why there's always another battle. And it feels like you're losing the war, even if you win any battles. I wrote something and it was kind of just came out of me. So I want to read from it and then I'll add to it as well. I wrote, horrible things are happening all the time. What we respond to now is what the media shows us. Horrible things are happening in the world all the time. You wake up in the morning, you have a beautiful morning, you have your cup of coffee, you say hi to your husband, wife, children, your dog, your animals. At the very same time, someone down the street just lost their parent. There is wars that we've never even heard of being fought. Children going through horrific things, people going through horrific things. This isn't about pretending that pain isn't there, right? It's about getting quiet enough to know how you can actually help. And the reason why I even bring up that horrible things are happening all the time is just to get us to realize that suffering and pain are ubiquitous, just as joy and love are ubiquitous. Why did I choose that word? It's like what we choose to focus on is what we give power to. As I mentioned, this is happening in gate 33, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but gate 33 is about retreat. It's not about retreating to avoid, it's about retreating to synthesize experiences and what we've gone through in order to know how to move forward. It's a gate of leadership, right? This is where the moon is in Leo. But it's a very specific type of leadership about sharing our stories and knowing your specific role. The world does not need a bunch of generalized warriors right now. It needs distinct and embodied roles. Some people are here to be frontline. Some people are here to help heal the frontline workers. Some are meant to spread ideas. Some are meant to organize a community. Some are meant to feed the community that's being organized by someone else. If you're trying to save the world in every single way, you're not listening to your unique contribution. Some of us are here to simply create art, the thing that gives us hope when things feel pointless. We need you embodied so you can play your crucial role. And if you're not choosing, you're reacting. And then you've lost your sovereignty. What do you want to focus on? You may or may not know I am from Iran. I was born in Shiraz, and you may or may not know that there are a lot of things happening in Iran, and I have to be careful sometimes about what I say because I have a lot of family there. I will say this: Iran, especially Shiraz, but Iran, is a country that has historically used art as a way to endure so much suffering. So much of our culture in Iran is based off of poetry, many of them from Shiraz, many of those poets from Shiraz. So much of our traditions are based in literature, in art. When history repeats its violence, we use art and creativity to endure beyond that moment. We use language as resistance so that brutality does not have the last word. And when we do this with love, knowing that we can't say that we want a free world, but only for the people who agree with us. This is how communities get fractured. This is how the people become weak because they stand apart and they blame the other side. Many of you guys know I have a history in political activism and animal rights activism and all these things. And I recently wrote a Substack about it, so you can check that out if you'd like. Maybe I'll put it in the description down below. But if you are wanting to create during this time and you're feeling like it's not going to save the world, it's pointless, it's useless, I'd like you to rethink that. As we take a look at the human design, we will see that this is happening in gate 33, which sits right here in the throat. Expression, manifestation. Leo is a very creative sign. And oftentimes we think of creativity, we think of art, like painting and literature. And in some ways, that is true. My digestive system agrees with that burp. In every moment, we create with how we choose to respond, how we choose to live, who we choose to be. Every sentence you speak is an act of creation. Every experience you have and that you try to curate is a sense of creativity. So if you don't call yourself an artist, maybe you'll rethink that as well. Gate 33, as I mentioned, goes from the shadow of forgetting to the gift of mindfulness to the city of revelation. Forgetting is about forgetting your true nature, which comes from love, and how so much of our lives are kept in this illusion, these old, outdated patterns that we don't recognize we are moving from. I have a huge love for Buddhism, specifically Theravada Buddhism. A lot of my work is informed by Buddhism. And I just want to read something from the Gene Keys book. This is Richard Rudd's book. I read from it often. I have a book list in my description box as well if you'd like to look at that. What happens when we go from the gift of forgetting, or I'm sorry, the shadow of forgetting to the gift of mindfulness is that we start recognizing what patterns we've been in that have actually been keeping us stuck. To be mindful, he says, is to be attentive, but it also suggests more than this. The person who displays the gift of mindfulness is someone who has loosened the grip of both extremes of the 33rd shadow. They are no longer held captive by their own unconscious desires, fears, and reactions. At the level of mindfulness, they may still hide or react, but now they can see themselves doing it. As you begin to recognize, to see through these unconscious tendencies that have driven your nature for so long, a new awareness develops within you. Oftentimes, we think that the goal, this is something I work with a lot with my one-on-one clients, and even in Inner Revolution Immersion, which is my group program that I'm running right now. We think that our role is to get rid of bad patterns, but we can't get rid of what we can't see. So we have to first get really aware of the patterns and to start noticing and witnessing. What ends up happening when we have all of this urgency, all this intensity, we mistake a sense of urgency for purpose when when action is not rooted in the body. Let me say that again. We mistake a sense of urgency for purpose when action is not rooted in the body. This is how power leaks. And our job becomes, how do I plug this hole up? How do I bring in more of that energy so that I can move and do something else with it, right? This is one of the things that I talked about in my Aquarius stellium video where I said, Pluto is in the gate of decrease. That's where it was meeting all of these planets. And decrease is about pulling your energy back. And this is the gate of retreat. This is the gate of privacy. It's one of the 3 alone gates out of the 64 gates in human design. It's one of the 3 alone gates, which means retreat, metabolize your experiences, and do it in whatever way is necessary, right? Because as I said, art is how grief is metabolized when everything else is stripped away. Allow your energy to gather so that it can be used effectively so it's not being discharged constantly. Oftentimes we are scared of our own power. We are scared of what will happen if this power builds up within us. I have decided to pull back on or to pause my one-on-one sessions starting in May. I don't have a timeline for it yet. It's for the foreseeable future, and I'm not going to get into the reasons right now, but essentially a part of it is this. A part of it is feeling this creative urge wanting to come through and needing to gather and have the energy for that creative urge to amplify and grow within me and to see where it wants to go next. I want to take this pain, this creativity, this anger, this grief, and I want to make something beautiful from it. And I don't even know what that thing is, but it's a knowing that's been coming up for me for a couple of months now, that my energy is asking to be contained. It's saying, can we just gather some more? So, with that being said, if you would like to work one on one with me, this is a great time to do that. I have my link in the description down below. I'm booking into March right now. So, still got a couple months left of doing sessions. Doing that was kind of a risk. Deciding that was kind of a risk. But this is why it's important for us to listen to our voice, that inner voice, to remember our true nature, which is that we're all here for different reasons. And sometimes we get so used to being useful or, continuing these patterns, these old patterns, and it keeps us really stuck in old roles, in ways that we think we need to behave when there are horrible things happening in our lives or out in the world. Not recognizing that, once again, if we don't take the time to retreat and to listen, we're not really sure what it is, that what our distinct role is. And it becomes more and more important now to start listening. So let me invite this for you right now. You tune into your body, maybe you'll close your eyes. I'd like you to notice the most activated part of your body. It might be loud, it might be subtle, and I want you to just notice that point. Wherever it is in your body, maybe it's in your jaw, maybe it's in your chest, maybe it's in your stomach, maybe it's in your leg, maybe it's in your arms. And just for a moment, I'd like you to let everything else soften around that point. And just notice how that feels. To let that space of concentrated energy exist. Thanks so much for being here. That's all I've got on this full moon. I'll see you next time.